All right. What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another day of SaberSim's DFS office hours. Today is Saturday, November 23rd of 2024. And looking ahead here, we have a 6-game NBA main slate later this evening. We have Formula One in Vegas tonight. That'll be super cool. And then we have MMA got underway very, very late last night. So I'm not sure if the card is still going on, but good luck to you all who played that. We have an 11-game NHL slate, college football all day long, and then we have NFL tomorrow. So action-packed weekend full of DFS action. If you guys aren't signed up with SaberSim, we have a 5-day no strings attached free trial. I always recommend people getting signed up on the weekend. The way you get access to all those weekend sports, and that takes you into the week. But for those of you who are new here, welcome. My name is Andrew, one of the coaches over here at SaberSim. This is a show where we go over how to use the SaberSim app, answer any and all DFS-related questions. Get your questions in one of 3 ways here. First off, send us an email, support@sabersim.com. Second, post it live in the YouTube chat. Third way, post it in the office hours channel in our Discord server. If you're not in our Discord and want to get access to that channel, there is a link in the description of this video. You also get access to our similar channels, individual sport channels, and you get access to the rest of the SaberSim team. Just can't say enough good things about the Discord. But with that said, we do this show Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern. We do this show here on Saturdays at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. You can tune in any one of those days and get your questions answered. But appreciate you guys hanging out with me on this Saturday morning/afternoon, depending what time zone you're in. Let's get SaberSim up and let's hit a couple of questions. I ran this build right before we got started. That way we'd have a big pool of 5K lineups to work with for any demos here. So first question, Andrew, is there a way in an NFL main slate to ensure that the flex player comes from the late window game when possible? Okay, so good question. Let's jump over to NFL for tomorrow. I'll use this early only one. We ran some lineups here yesterday, so this is just a opportunity. Actually, no, all the games start at the same time for early only, so that actually will not work. So let's go to the main slate. Let's try that again. All right, main lineups. Get 500. All right, let's let this run. I thought I was smart building lineups for NBA before we got started, and then now I need to build more lineups for NFL, but it's all right. So let the lineups run. Weird. It's building 5,000 and my lineups say 500. I'm just going to stop it. 3,000 lineups, more than enough. So basically what we're talking about is, let's say that you have 3 running backs in your lineup and 2 of them are in the early window, which is 10 a.m. here on the West Coast. And then the third running back is in the afternoon window, which would be the 1 o'clock games, my time. And the user here is asking, hey, how do I ensure that the running back with the afternoon time is in the flex spot and not one of the other 2 positions? So the answer is that we do that automatically for you. So what we do, and this is actually a perfect example. So this first lineup here has Kareem Hunt at Carolina. That game is at 10 a.m. Has Joe Mixon versus Tennessee. That game is at 10 a.m. And then it has Amir Abdullah for the Raiders, where Denver is in Vegas, and that game is at 1:05. So this is a perfect example. We are automatically going to do that for you if it works out, right? If you have 3 running backs and 1 is in the afternoon, great, we're going to put them there. If you have 4 wide receivers and 1 of them is in the afternoon, 1 of them is going to go in the flex. So we're always going to do that automatically. Just wanted to be clear and wanted to give a visual example. So nice to see that this top lineup was the perfect example. All right, next question. I was wondering if you could give some insight on how the single game score is calculated when building showdown lineups, not asking for deep secrets, but in general, I've noticed that the correlation between the single game score and simulated ROI is consistently weaker then the correlation between the other calculated metrics like large slate 100 to 1K saber score and simulated ROI. Is there something you use in combination with the single game score to build good showdown lineups? Okay, so good question. Let's jump over to any showdown for NFL tomorrow. We'll just take the first one I see, which is the Bucks and the Giants. So let's come in here. Let's run some lineups. We'll just run 200. Kick this off. And we're just waiting for the lineups. All right, cool. Lineups built. So we have our 200 lineups, right? So what we're referring to for the single game versus a large slate, right? These are the saber score sorting metrics. So we have different saber scores based on the number of games on the slate. So single game is there is one game on the slate. Small slate is 2 to 5 games. And then large slate is 6 or more games. Okay. And then the numbers behind this line represent the number of entries in the contest you're optimizing for, right? So just to be clear on all of those things. Now, what the single game does differently than the other saber scores is it uses different variables, right? So if we go and look at small slate, we click on the eye icon, you could see the variables used. It's typically projection, some type of percentile, either like 95th or 99th, and then average adjusted ownership. Those are like the main 3 things. So it's floor, upside, ownership. You get that's the way I think about it, right? These 3 key components to taking down a DFS GPP. Single game is a little different. Single game, it does use the projection still. It does use the average adjusted ownership, but it removes percentile and it uses sim optimals. Now, what is sim optimals, right? We do have a tutorial video on this if you want to check that out in our help documentation, just to call this out. So you go to help in the top right corner, you go to view more, you click the SaberSim frequently asked questions and glossary, and then we have this sim optimals video, which I will drop in the YouTube chat here. All right. So anyways, happy to explain it as well. I just wanted to call that video out. So sim optimals represents when a lineup is the highest scoring lineup that could have been built from when we pull the sims, right? So for instance, this top lineup has sim optimals of 7. So the reason it shows 7 is because we're not going to put the same lineup into your pool more than once. We are only going to put a lineup into the pool one time. Now, that doesn't mean it couldn't have been the best lineup more than once. So we actually think that information is valuable. Hey, this lineup has come, this combination of 6 players exactly the way it is. 1 in the flex and the others in the, 5 in the flex and 1 in the captain has come up 7 times. Even though we can only put it into your pool once, that is important information for us to be aware of. So we are tallying that information, counting it as we're building out your pool. We're summarizing it as sim optimals, and then we are using that input as a variable to the saber score formula. So the sim optimals effectively is like I like to think about it as like win probability or like win chance of the lineup. Like, hey, this lineup, is the highest scoring lineup. It is the best lineup, more often than some of the other lineups in your pool. Now, the reason it doesn't always correlate well to ROI is because of duplication risk, right? This lineup could win a lot, yes, but it could also be duplicated 200 times in the contest or in the field lineups, and it ends up turning a low ROI. It ends up not, the juice ends up not being worth the squeeze. So that's the biggest thing. And the biggest difference between lineups that you build for Showdown and lineups that you build for classic slates, like you're referring to, like the large slate, 100 to 1K, those large slates, you're not as worried about duplication. That's not a factor. So win probability actually goes a lot further in classic slates, from the sim, or like high saber scores, or, lineups with high upside, right? Those lineups do well, and they don't have to worry about their ROI being damaged by other users playing the same exact lineup. So that's the biggest difference between the two. And that's why we kind of always recommend, like, hey, be conscious of duplication. use Geomean, use some ownership filters, be aware of your salary, be aware of lineup construction, right? Be aware of all these things that could ultimately end up hurting your ROI. So those are the biggest factors you need to be aware of between the different Sabre scores. But very good clarification question. All right. Those were our initial questions to get us started today. Let me take a peek in office hours. Looks like there is another one here before we run a build demo here. So let me get this next question in the queue and we'll keep it rolling. All right. This one came in from MacMan. And then we got one from Jimmy here. So we'll hit these two. Jimmy said, for NFL Thanksgiving games, is Geomean appropriate? Also, I thought I heard you say the other day that when there are 4 or less NFL games, you don't use players facing opposing defense filter. Okay, 2 questions here. Let's go one at a time. So is Geomean appropriate for NFL Thanksgiving? I personally think so, right? And a good way to check, right, is how many games are there on the Thanksgiving slate? Well, there's 3, right? So what I would do is I would go and find a past 3-game slate. And you could typically find these on like the afternoon slates. So I go back here, right? And I go and I look and it's like, okay, can I find a 3-game slate from last week? And it looks like the afternoon only 3 games, right? Okay, cool. Awesome, right? I'm going to go to this slate and then I'm going to go find what I would the contests on Thanksgiving are generally big, right? So I would go and look at a bigger sized contest. $47,000 is the biggest entry contest for the afternoon only from last week. I mean, the Millie Maker is, I think it had like almost 600,000 entries, right? So let's go see if duplication is a factor. Oh wait, this is for this week. My bad. I was supposed to be on last week. Kind of weird. Okay, afternoon only 11-17. Yeah, this is definitely last week. And then I'll pull up the mini max. So let's let these lineups load. Go to users. We'll look at people who 150'd, and we'll look at sim ROI. So yeah, I mean, this is a 3-game slate, 47,000 entries, and duplication is high, right? Average dupes 9, average dupes 2, average dupes 7, average dupes 4, 11, 5, 7, 5, 9, 8. So duplication on 3-game slates is super important. Now, increase all the contest sizes, it becomes even more of a factor, right? So I am definitely going to be doing something to account for duplication on the Thanksgiving Day slate for sure. And I would recommend you guys do too. Oh, there was 2 questions here. Second one, the other day, I heard you say that when there are 4 or less NFL games, you don't use players facing opposing defense filter. So we're referring to the default rule here, right? So if we like even just stay on this 3-game slate, you when you go to rules, there is typically a default NFL rule that says don't use players against opposing defense, where basically you don't want to have a player in a lineup with the other team's defense because, you know, if you are playing, for example, Kareem Hunt in your lineup, but you also have the Buffalo Bills D, well, guess what? You know, when Hunt scores a touchdown, there's like a decrease in the points for your defense, right? I said I don't use that on short slates, and that is true, right? I don't use it on like 2-game slates, 3-game slates. 4 game is like 50-50. You know, I don't have like a hard and fast rule there, or at least like it doesn't come to mind. But I'm definitely leaving it off for 2 and 3-game slates. And you know, the Monday to Thursday slate this like past week is a perfect example. You know, if we go back to Monday to Thursday, what day is today? The 23rd, so it'll be the 18th. So this Monday to Thursday slate was super interesting, right? This was something that caught my eye when I was reviewing my own lineups. So when I come in here, right, and we can just look at actuals. So highest actual scoring defense was the Texans, right? They had a defensive touchdown. They had, I think, like a lot of sacks. Cooper Rush had a lot of interceptions. But then if you go and look at quarterbacks, Cooper Rush was actually the highest scoring quarterback as well. So this was a scenario where it would be a great idea to leave that rule off because Cooper Rush, highest actual scoring quarterback, but the defense that he was facing was actually the highest scoring defense as well, right? So in my mind, super weird things can happen on 2-game slates, 3-game slates, possibly even 4-game slates. And the less games there are on the slate, the less restrictions I want to put on the builder. And I kind of just want to let it do its thing, right? So that would be a reason for leaving it off, right? Like seeing weird stuff like this. And when you're playing like all of the, I play all the prime times, the Sunday night football, Monday night football, 2-game slates, the Monday to Thursday, the 3-game afternoon slates, all of those short slates, you see these things more and more and more. And it kind of like turns you off to the idea of putting these restrictions on the builder for these small slates, right? So that's why I don't use it. And that's an example. All right, next question. When playing NBA, is it good to late swap with multiple uniques, or should we leave it at one? The same with NFL. Should it be better to late swap with multiple or leave at one? Good question. I was talking about this, I think, yesterday. I typically just leave it at whatever I started the slate with. So, let's say I'm using 3 uniques for all my contests. I open up my late swap. The first time you run your late swap, the min uniques are going to reset because it's a brand new build. But if you use that same swap the entire night, when you click rebuild lineups, your min uniques are going to hold. So you'll have to reset your min uniques the very first time you rerun it. But every time after that, that number is going to stay constant. So I just leave it at where it was. You could effectively redo it every time, right? Like every time I think the optimal strategy, in my opinion, is if you have the time, rebuild your lineups, reset min uniques to 1, and then go in here and start increasing your min uniques and look for that drop off in projection and ROI if you have those available to you from your aggregate metrics, and then stop at the right number, right? It's probably cutting some corners, being a little lazy to like leave it at the same number. But there's some like life EV stuff and some offsetting things that, you got to make decisions about, like, is it worth the time to do that every time? So kind of a personal choice. I just leave it at the same number the rest of the night, but you could approach it differently. So depends what you're trying to do. All right. HC said, Andrew, just messing around on college football, did direct fill, unique random, 20 max, and I noticed it used lineups 1 through 20. Shouldn't it have mixed them up? Depends how many contests you had, right? So in general, the way it should work, right? Like, let's say I'm doing it for this slate where let's be like a pre-slate build. If I have unique random on and I have 109 entries, 109 lineups, lineup 1 can go into any one of these. Lineup 2 can go into any one of these, right? The random part will randomly assign it. It's not going to go from the top down, right? It's going to put the lineups wherever. The unique part is just going to make sure that every lineup gets used at least once before another lineup gets used. Now, if you only have one contest, a 20 max, it will not matter whether you use rank, unique rank, or unique random, right? In order for those to work appropriately, you need to have a group of contests selected. You need to have more than one, right? So if I have 2 selected and then I have 40 lineups, if I use unique rank, it will put the top 20 in the first one, second 20 in the second one, right? If I have unique random, it could be a mix, right? Top contest could get lineups 1, 40, 2, 39, 3, 38, right? As an example. And then, contest 2 can get all the other ones. So that's how it should be working. The way you described it, it kind of sounds like you have one contest. So I'm not 100% sure. All right. So far, so good here. No additional questions in the office hours channel at the moment. So why don't we jump into a build demo for today? Go back to Saturday, go back to NBA, go to the main slate. All right. So if I'm building lineups for today's NBA slate here, right? What I'm going to want to do is build my lineups, which I already have, right? I've talked about increasing minimum salary in past examples here. I would probably still do that if I was redoing this. I would run my lineups, run the max that you can for the plan that you're on. I like to come in here, sort by exposure. If you have contest sims, great. Now's a good time to run it. If you only have Saber Score, great. Use Saber Score, right? The biggest thing is come in and find the number of entries for the contest that you're optimizing for. Typically, I would just say either if you have your biggest entry fee contest, your biggest sized contest, your biggest prize to first, the contest you care about the most, right? Those things are probably usually correlated. So I would set your Saber Score based on that information. But let's say that, the contest that you care about the most is in the 1K to 10K range. Okay, great. Go and change it to that. So now that I have that set, I have my average projection, aggregate metric. I'm ready to start adjusting my uniques, right? And I'm going to come in here, start to adjust my uniques, watching how my average projection is adjusting based on that information. So going from 1 unique to 3 has brought it down about 1.5 points. Seems an okay change. Going to go to 4. Brings it down to like 279. I probably wouldn't want to go any further than this, just because I think we're starting to sacrifice too much projection, going down about, in total, like 3.5 points there. So 3 seems okay. 4 seems okay. If you want to go to 4, the biggest thing that you should be considering is, hey, am I comfortable with the exposures and leverages that I'm seeing, and make a decision from there, right? So like the biggest difference I see going from 3 to 4 is that at 3 uniques, we have Diabate in 95% of our lineups. And then at 4, we have him in 80%. And then at 5, he gets all the way down to 70%, right? So you got to kind of figure out like, hey, am I comfortable with the exposures and the players that I'm seeing, and go from there. But seems to be some value on Charlotte today. Seems to be like the best value spot that I'm noticing here. So that could warrant some additional research, right? Just like going into Charlotte, saying, hey, where is the value coming from? Oh, Miles Bridges is out. Oh, Trey Mann is out. 2 centers are out, right? Richards and Williams. So Richards and Williams being out, it's like, okay, I understand why Diabate is value, right? 3rd center, lower salary, high minutes today. That makes sense. Why am I seeing some of these other guys coming up? Cody Martin, high value. And it's like, oh, okay, he's probably getting some additional minutes from Trey Mann being out. And then there's probably some usage coming from Bridges to some of these other players as well. So you can kind of tell a story through the injury report and see if the value adds up on any given day. So that's like something that I'll definitely recommend doing, is coming in here, sorting by value and just trying to see, hey, where are the biggest value spots? Why are these the biggest value spots? And try to work a little bit backwards. HC said that he did only have 1 contest. Awesome. I thought that was it. So I just want to make sure we were right there. But other than that, those are the main things that I'm hitting on for NBA build, and then going to come in here in late swap. There is a nice 1 hour gap between the first game and then the rest of the slate here. So even if there is no news, that could be a good opportunity to start to take advantage of the live contest sims if you're on the Ultimate subscription. So keep that in mind. But appreciate everybody tuning in. I will see you all on Monday, 4 p.m. Eastern, for our next office hours show. So until then, take care. Good luck. Thanks. Bye.